Guys, so for my final capstone project, I'll be pitching an original feature. Um, it's a drama. It's called The Ministry. And I'll start off by saying throughout my life, I've been uh, I've been fortunate enough to be able to travel to different places, different parts around the country and sometimes around the world. I'm originally from the East Coast. I came to Chicago for college, and I've been able to meet incredible people here and just have like an unbelievable experience in the city. One that I've never thought I'd ever have, and so I'm very thankful for that. But even before I came here for college, I've been traveling a lot and meeting all types of different people. And one experience I had with that was back in 2011 when I was a teenager, a young teenager. Um, one that summer, my dad he wanted me to not be lazy and sit on the couch all day that summer. Uh, and so he wanted. I play the piano at my church sometimes. I've been playing the piano for about 10 years, and sometimes I used to play at my church. And so he had the idea to send me to this this Catholic music camp in Minnesota for about a week. And I didn't want to go. I hated the idea of it, but my dad sent me anyway. Um, and Yeah, I hated the idea of going, but after a while, I ended up loving it, and I went back for 2 more years after that. So that was a great experience for me, and I'm happy I went. And so that's what I based this film off of. I loosely based it off that experience about a kid going somewhere to a music camp and um, not liking it first, but eventually he gets used to it and ends up having like a life changing experience. Yeah, the project, the actual, in real life, the place is called Music Ministry Alive, and my film that I based it off of, is called The Ministry. And so, in the story, the main character is called James, um, and I'll do it for my leave behind. Um, so, in the beginning, James is he's playing the piano at his church, and he needs to be ready for mass tomorrow. And so that night, he goes out to dinner with his dad, and they talk about what James wants to do with his life, and is he is he happy with playing in the church, and what does he really want to do with his life, and if he wants to pursue piano more. And James says he does like playing the piano, but he wants to do more with his life than just like playing at his church every day. He wants to do something big with his music. And so off that note, we James that same night, James goes out with his friends, and they're all underage. James is like 17, um, and a couple of his friends have fake IDs, and they get some alcohol, and they drink, and James drinks a little too much, and James his dad let him drive his car, and so James drives his dad's car back home drunk, and he gets caught and charged with a DUI and put in jail. And so his dad ends up bailing him out, and a few weeks later, his dad shows him the ministry, and he basically tells him that you have to go in order to get your life together. And James, he doesn't want to go. He doesn't like the idea. Um, but his dad just is very hard about it and will not take no for an answer. He says, "You're going, or else." And so James is forced to go. And also, there's this girl named Claire who also is in James's church, who James doesn't really like all too much. He doesn't really, get along with her, but she also goes, and so they're just kind of stuck together. Um, and so yeah, they James he gets the ministry before he leaves. They send him a song to learn because at the end of their stay there, there's this big concert, and they um, all the kids perform in this big concert because they're all instrumentalists or singers. All the kids at the camp, and so yeah, there's this big concert with all of them at the end, uh, and James needs to learn the song in order to perform it. And so yeah, James practices the song, and um, then he and Claire leave to the ministry. James, it's a beautiful campus, but everyone there is James isn't really like a very touchy feely guy. He likes to keep his distance, but everyone there, is very huggy and touchy feeling, and James isn't really about that. Um, and so on his first day, James meets four guys. Um, their names are Trey, Martin, Chris, and Raphael, and they're kind of cool guys. They they try to talk to James, and they have this thing about they play like a pickup basketball game every year, and they try to get James to come along, and James doesn't really want to at first, but they keep bugging him, and so James says yeah, and so they tell him, be ready on this day, and we're gonna play a pickup game, and it's like very serious to them because it's like a ritual for them. Um, and so uh, later that day, James he goes to his I call it a group music lesson where he practices. Um, he has these two teachers, and they just like practice. It's like a classroom setting basically. So it's basically like class for the day, and they just like practice the piano and stuff like that. And also later that night, they have a peer group, which is a bunch of the kids from the camp and this one leader, and they just talk about uh, you know uh, what their experience that they're having, and just any really thing that they want to talk about. It's like a group meeting with friends. And so those are the three main events and tools that I use throughout the story. It's the four guys that he plays the pickup game with. It's the group musical classes and the peer group, and those are the three things that I use to help push James through his transformation throughout the story. And so he goes through those things on the first day, and then the next day, James has rehearsal, and he's a little nervous for it, but once he um, once he starts playing, well, the rehearsal is it's like in a big auditorium, and it's like where all the kids in the whole camp get together and practice their songs together for the first time. And so James is a little nervous about it. Once he gets up on stage and he sees everyone looking at him, he's the nervous hit him. But once he starts playing, he starts to get into it, and he's like a really really talented piano player. Um, and everyone compliments on his skills, which slowly starts to help him feel more comfortable. Um, and so, also on the second day, during peer group that night, James talks about how he was surprised that the just how the rehearsal went and how everyone sounded playing together, and that it was an experience that he had never really had before, and playing in like a musical group like that was something he'd never done before. And so that's kind of like his first experience of him sort of expressing himself a little. Um, and yeah, the next day is when he plays the pickup basketball game with Trey, Chris, and Raphael. And that's just kind of like supposed to be a fun scene of him meshing with like the kids there. It's a short scene. And but right after that, James has a private lesson with a man named Robert, and this is actually a very important scene because it tells James explains to Robert that his mom had passed away a little while ago, and she was the whole reason why he got into piano in the first place. She had taught him how to play the piano, but she had died, and now James he plays. He Actually, Robert says the whole reason his mom. He says that his mom was an inspiration for him to be so good at the piano, and the reason why James plays so well is because he plays for her and he plays with her passion. And so that's sort of like the big, like, sort of, I don't know, reveal, I guess. That's the scene that shows James's motivation. And Robert tells James that, um, his mom would be happy about how far he's come along with his piano playing, and that the concert at the end of the week will be his opportunity to show that that will be like his big opportunity to do his big thing that he had wanted to do earlier, that he mentioned about earlier in the film. Um, and so the next day is when things really start to go south for James. So throughout the story, I'm going to be setting up that the communal bathrooms, there's always a super long line for the showers. And on this day, it finally catches up to James because he's late to rehearsal. And I also have it set up that if you miss a rehearsal, then you're kind of just like done, and you just miss the rehearsal for that day, which is a very bad thing because you don't want to miss a rehearsal um, in the ministry. And so James misses the rehearsal. I have him dropping his music in a puddle so he can't read it anymore, and he ends up his group music instructor ends up switching him from the piano in the final concert. He switches him off of that to another instrument called the synthesizer, which is a lot. It's like the backup singer to the piano. It's a lot softer. It can't you have to like you can't really hear it. You have to like listen to it in order to hear it. And so he basically takes him off his main instrument in the concert um, that he finally actually wanted to do. After his conversation with Robert, he was finally inspired to actually play well for his mother. But now they just totally took him off that and just kind of like ruined everything for him. And so that really upsets him. And that's kind of like his all his lost moment. And that night, he talks to Sarah, which is the leader of his peer group, and James tells Sarah about his past, how his DUI, and why he's even at the ministry in the first place. And Sarah tells James that your past is your past, and it doesn't matter what your past is. You just have to learn from it and move on. And no one at the camp is judging him for anything he did at the past because they're in the present now. And Sarah also tells James that she had a boyfriend in the past that used to abuse her, and so it was hard for her to move on from that, but eventually she did, and so she has personal experience herself in dealing with these hard times, and so Sarah and James just sort of have a heart-to-heart moment right there, and that helps James feel a little better. And so the next day is the day of the concert, and so James, he still feels a little upset, but he feels, the conversation with Sarah, he remembers that, and so he's just, he's just going to deal with it. And so he plays a synthesizer, and Robert is also there, and he sees him, and that helps James feel a little more confident. And the concert goes fine, and at the end, it's one big happy scene, and everyone's hugging and feels happy. Um, and yeah, and yeah, they leave the camp, and I actually didn't have the whole ending worked out yet. The whole outro worked out yet, I guess. But that's kind of like the climax, the concert, and James playing on the synthesizer. Um, and so yeah, the the main thing about this story is that there's just a lot of small stuff uh, that happens, and like a few big things that happen that sort of push James down the pathway of changing, becoming a less of a close knit person to an open knit person. And so that's like the main theme of the story. I wanted the story to be inspirational and happy and funny too. Um, and I wanted it to be a story that people could relate to and could enjoy, and that could um, just make people feel better who watched it. Um, and so yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed that, and that's the ministry. And thank you.